Hi, this is Joe Rabil. Welcome back. So what we're going to do today is start off the show talking about ADX. And I want to break it down so that you truly understand what the difference is between the buyers and the sellers, how they can be used in three different ways. I'm going to show you contraction phase, low ADX period, and an expansion phase. And I think this will truly be helpful, give you an edge over other traders if you start to understand and spend some time with this indicator. So I've got a weekly chart of Suncor Energy up, SU, and just with the ADX at the bottom scale. And what I want to do is really break this down so you have a better idea of how these lines, what they mean, how to use them. So the green line is positive DI. It is telling us the strength and or weakness of the buyers. And that would go with price. So price is the determining factor. We're watching what price is doing. And then we're using the DI line. Specifically, I'm focusing on the green DI line to focus in on how strong the buyers are during each move to the upside. Okay. And are they confirming the move? And then during pullbacks, how weak are the buyers? So we want to keep an eye out for this, because if we can follow how strong the buyers are, I think it can give us a pretty good indication as to when they are starting to tire out. In other words, let's think about it in common sense standpoint. We get a breakout pattern. We get a lot of people that think this looks really attractive, and then it makes a move to the upside and we get our first pullback, legitimate pullback. They still think it looks really attractive. You see how we're hitting new highs in DI on the way up? They're still interested in being buyers. And then we make another move to the upside. Notice how we do not make a higher high here. So what that's telling me in my interpretation of this, trying to look at it from a common sense standpoint, is that the buyers are sort of looking at it like, okay, so back in the beginning of the year, this stock was $25, and in 2 months, month and a half, I've moved up to 40. I'm not as interested in buying here. And that's kind of what the DI line is telling me. Okay. Now, if we separate this out and we look at the red line is the strength and or weakness of the sellers. It's completely separate. This is negative DI. We want to look at it as a completely different set of players. All right. And what we want to do is look at this. This was the low, and this is the peak in red DI. All right. And then we make a move up, we pull back, we make another move to the upside. And if you notice, we're making lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. You see how the sellers continue to weaken and trend to the downside until this day right here, which is this bar on here. Now, this is on a weekly chart. Now, what most people do is they look for crossovers in the DI lines. They're looking for the red crossing the green, and that's sort of like their signal. But for me, what I'm looking at is, okay, so I've got this situation here where I've made a low, and then I get this one big drop and essentially take out this area here. And then I have this one big bar to the upside, and it takes out essentially all of these highs. You see the reversal that takes place here? So I've got what I believe is the start of a contraction phase with this big move to the upside and this big move to the downside. These are starting to contract. If they're contracting, it doesn't necessarily mean reversal. It means they could just start to consolidate and then set up another move to the upside. In this case, it was the beginning of a prolonged consolidation that turned into a significant low ADX period. You see how long this stayed, where all these lines were basically having a struggle to get above 25. Now, one of the things I want to make sure you understand is you get these little pokes above the 25 level. Both green and red did it during these periods. But we don't want to focus on the ADX. We want to focus on price. We're looking for price to do something meaningful. And we didn't have that. We really have been looking for something meaningful to take place. And finally, just recently, we finally got price to kind of break out of a consolidation period. You can almost look at it like a big ascending triangle. We didn't have a breakout to the downside. We didn't have a breakout to the upside until recently. All right. So all of these little fits and starts on both sides should really be ignored. We're not using these lines to determine anything. We are using price, and then we're confirming it with the lines. All right. So what we've got is a breakout here that just took place in the last month or so, with green DI confirming by breaking out above all of these little fits and starts over the last year. All right. So we want to look for a real breakout in price and then confirm it with this. Now, that's why a lot of people say, I don't really need ADX. I don't need indicators. But for me, I like to look for stocks that have had this prolonged period of consolidation with a low ADX period. Because I know if I can sort, I can screen for this and I can go find all the stocks. And one of the screens I like to go through, it's a big screen. I mean, I'm looking at a lot of stocks, is I just say anything with the low ADX, right? I mean, anything that has low ADX on a weekly chart. And I want to go look at all those stocks and see if there's anything forming a really nice looking base. To me, it's a lot easier to do that than to try and screen for price. You know, I mean, I wouldn't even know how to create this pattern unless I'm using the ADX. So that's one of the reasons why I love ADX. Now, notice what's taking place now. Now we get this breakout to the upside. Now we're in an expansion phase. All right. This was contraction, right? This was the contraction phase, low ADX period. And now we're heading into a new expansion phase. All right. Now the ADX is rising just like it was here, but we want to watch and see, you know, we might get a little consolidation. I don't get as worried when we're just breaking out if this starts to consolidate a little bit in the near term, you know, during a pullback or something like that. But if we start to show a real trend, kind of like what happened here, we started to trend to the upside and then we finally kind of showed divergence. That's really what I'd be looking for. On the first pullback, you might have what looks like a start of a contraction phase, but I don't think that's what I would be looking for based on what price is doing. I think we get a pullback and then we go again. That's how I'd be reading this right now. We're in an expansion phase and we're looking for a period where, you know, first you'll start to see the divergences kick in where we don't get a match, we don't get the confirmation, and then you'll get an ensuing decline, a really strong, usually on a strong red bar or something like that, where red DI will kick in and green DI will really drop off. So I think these are useful tools for you to be able to use this in conjunction with price. Don't use it without price. You use it to support what you're seeing in the price action. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. If you go to the services page, you will find information on the courses. I added a new course recently, a few months ago, and I changed the way I price it. I now offer lifetime access, which I have not done in the past. So take a look if you have an interest. Okay, I got the chart of the QQQ up, but one of the things I get questions on periodically is the settings for the ADX. So if we pop down here and I hit this little settings or spin wheel or whatever, it pops up on this side. And what we want, the way I have it set up is the settings I like are 13 for the DI, and then the smoothing, which is essentially the ADX line, which is the blue line. Okay, I set to 8. And the reason why I want to do that is that I want to have quicker peaks and valleys in all the different time frames, because I want to be able to compare each peak. So I can compare this bottom here, and then I can compare this rally here, which was weaker, and then I can compare this rally here to that. You see what I mean? So I can see the 1414 version is much slower. It won't create the same amount of peaks and valleys. So that's my reasoning, but that's the setup and the way that you want it to look. Very easy to do in Stockcharts. Now, I do want to mention that if you want to get my chart template, you don't have to recreate it yourself. You can go to the experts section under the chart templates and scroll down, and you'll see my name, and you can just pop it. It'll pop the chart right in there. All right, let's look at this QQQ, because pretty important development taking place. And I know we've got the Fed coming out this afternoon. That obviously it's going to be a market moving event. But what's taking place here is we had a very strong decline. And the reason why I know that's strong, I can see it based on the price action. For sure. big bars to the downside. But look at this massive amount of overrun that took place versus the zero level. All right. When we break that, we know that typically you need a little bit more time to turn things around. In this case, we rallied up and now moving averages are declining. Now, we don't have a whole lot of strength on the sellers because the blue line, the ADX line, has not gotten above 25, but red is definitely in command right now. They have taken over the dominance for now, but we want to see how this reacts at support. And we also want to do that for the same reason on the weekly chart, because this big red bar caused the MACD to cross down over. Now, typically what I recommend, and when I go through in my course in detail, is when we get that kind of a decline, that I'm looking for a retracement back up, usually around the 50% mark, which is about what we rallied to. And then we come back down and test. And the question becomes, do we hold or do we fail? If we fail, then there's a lot more risk. In the near term, we maybe come down to a bigger support zone. If we can hold, then we're looking for entry as it comes back up through this prior peak. And that'll really eradicate this big red bar also. So that's kind of what we're on the lookout for. The reason why I'm still willing to look for upside potential, even though what the MACD is doing, because the ADX confirmed the move. Even more so when you look at the Dow Jones, the DIA, and the SPY. All right, let's look at IWM. This is the weak sister of the four indexes that I look at, and it hasn't really kicked in, and we still don't have relative performance. I mentioned the possibility of an RSI buy signal, but if you notice, we don't have a close above the low bar, which is what we're going to need in order to get a reversal to take place and a confirmed signal on an RSI basis. We are coming into support, but we're just not showing the same kind of strength that we really want to see here. It's not the type of strength that I would have preferred on this move to the upside to get this ADX to rally up well above 30, or at least above 30, and then maybe be pulling back now. But we never even got above 25, so not the type of situation we want to see in terms of follow through. So I need a little bit more confirmation here, and I think that'll improve the situation. Let's look at. Now, one thing I did want to point out on the QQQ, let me go back for a second. You see what's going on a relative basis? This was leading. This is outperformance. This black line rising is when it's outperforming the S&P. Now it's declining and it's below its 30-week moving average of the relative strength. All right. So there's definite deterioration on a relative basis to the S&P. I think that's a big deal after being such a strong performer over a year now. All right. Now, reason why I'm bringing that up is that I want to show you, I got a couple requests for some sectors, and I want to show you what's going on. So look at the consumer staples sector, and look at how we're finally getting a bump on a relative basis. You see how this has been underperforming to a significant degree. Now we're getting a little bit of a, so while the market's sort of hesitating in here, these are actually showing a little bit more strength. Now, this is not confirmed. We need to see this move up enough to get this moving average to kind of turn the corner. In the same way that we did it here, and this flattened out and kind of turned things around. Then we had a decline phase. I think it's going to take a little bit more work here. However, yeah, I do see improvement, and I do a lot of bottom-up work, all right? And the bottom-up work is showing signs of improvement. Some of the stocks that I'm highlighting to my subscribers are showing, there's more and more of these staple stocks, some of the leading patterns showing up. And, you can see something like Procter & Gamble, which has held its ground very well. It's already above that prior peak. So you want to be on the lookout for the leading candidates there. But this is certainly a sector that I probably continue to watch, especially if the market and what I'm talking about in the QQQ continues to show a little bit of more short-term deterioration. Okay. Look at the XLU, because this is even more extreme when you look at it on a relative basis. You see how this has already crossed its 30-week? I mean, I think this is a somewhat of a big deal because we've been really underperforming in this. You can draw in this trend line. It really has been in a downward trend, but look at what happened. And I've been highlighting this again because to subscribers, because we had an undercut and then we pulled back and held that area where you broke down from, and now have turned up from there. Now we're getting through the 18-month line. right? We're showing improvement on a relative basis, starting to get some signs of improved momentum. You see the MACD crossing back above. Look at the weekly MACD crossing back above the zero line for the first time since 22. So I think we have to respect what's going on here. Now, the way I like to do it is to make this, hopefully this pushes up a little bit more. And then on a pullback, the MACD holds. I actually would like to see a little bit more strength to get the green to break out above all these peaks and valleys in the red and the green. But we have to, I think, respect the short-term action here. And this could be an intriguing area on a minor pullback. We want to watch how orderly that pullback is. Okay, let's look at CDXC. Look at this breakout taking place, and we're getting a pullback here. Now, the way this is setting up, I think, is actually pretty attractive. We had a dynamic move to the upside, and now we're pulling back. We're starting to get these two moving averages to come together. We've got the MACD coming down closer to the zero line. So we don't really have a lower low. So if we could make this come down and make a minor low, then we can draw on a trend line. If that doesn't happen, then we kind of need a little double bottom and then take out the prior high. That's what I'd be watching for on this as it continues to consolidate and pull back, but definitely a stock to keep on the watch list. This is getting closer and closer to looking more attractive to me. Okay, let's look at CELH. Now, this is sort of more like what I'm seeing in the market. We had the move to the upside, which had nice strength, but the pullback was too strong. You see how the MACD overrunning? Let's just look at this a little bit more. This is happening everywhere. This pullback is overrunning the signal line. So when I see that with this type of strength and good volume pattern, I don't necessarily want to say, no, this isn't going to work. But I also don't want to buy as soon as this turns up. I'm not looking for a trigger on the daily yet. What I want to see is a move to the upside and then maybe a retrace. I think this is going to be a little bit more complex of a bottom, especially when you look at the monthly chart with the big topping tail. So we've got a lot of stocks that are kind of playing out like this. The retracement was a little too hard. Don't be in a big hurry to look for a buy right now. We do have earnings coming next week, so got to be a little bit careful there. But more important to me is the fact that there's too much overrun of the MACD on both time frames here. Certainly a stock you can keep on a watch list, but we need to be a little bit more patient with our entry. All right, let's look at the TLRY. No, there's some news coming out with the CBD stock. So it's possible that this is starting to show signs of strength, but this really kind of bugs me a little bit. You get this big green bar, and look at how we're erasing a lot of it right away. All right, we want to retain half of that bar, and we're already below the midpoint of that. So a little bit of disturbance there in terms of not being able to get through resistance at 2.5, number one, and number two, already retracing a lot of this bar. Now, I would keep watching. If we can get back above the high of this bar, then that would, I think, improve a lot, especially because we came back above this key resistance area at 2.5. So that's really what I'm watching for, is that 2.5 area. Okay, so TGB, we got certainly got some improvement in some of these mining companies, gold, silver, and well as mining. So look at the strength and look at the volume pattern. You see how much volume's coming into this? Look at all the ADX kicking in. Look at how strong the MACD is. The problem we've got is we're a little stretched away from the moving average on both the monthly and the weekly. So I think this has to consolidate more. We've got earnings coming. It looks like it hasn't come yet. That's probably at the close today. And I would just be on the lookout for this to come in a little bit more. If we can work our way a little bit closer towards the 18-week, I think that's really provides the next sort of buying opportunity. That's what I'd be watching in that stock. All right. Let's look at LHX. So we're starting to see a little bit of improvement on a monthly chart where it's getting back above the 18-month line. But you see how the MACD is still below its signal line? Below the zero line. So I'm not as interested in that. And then we've made this move to the upside and we've gone quiet. But look at we don't have any ADX strength on the move to the upside. So I don't mind this being too big, right? You see how this was big? Because I'm kind of looking at it like maybe a potential climax pattern. But we need ensuing strength. And it doesn't have to be on an ADX basis, but I want to see a little bit better DI strength. It's not really quite as strong as I would like to see. So the only way I can look at this is to say, you know, do it as a breakout play. And I don't know that this has gone sideways long enough for me. And if I'm looking at this as an aerospace defense type company, it just doesn't, I mean, there's so many better looking names, I think, stronger stocks in this industry group that I would be more interested in. Yes, there's signs of improvement in the stock, no doubt, but it's sort of a laggard in the group as far as I can tell when I go through the list. Okay, look at RH. So, you know, I mean, we can see what's going on when we look at it on the monthly chart. It's got a huge amount of support here, but it's also got this problem with the 40-month moving average and this resistance zone. Let me just point out that level because it did get through at 350-ish, right? Because we did actually get through it here. If you look at this, it looked like it was kind of getting through that resistance, but in reality, we're really dealing with a decline with a 40-month moving average that's acting as resistance. But until we can get back above the 350 level, I just don't think there's anything to do. That's a big, massive red bar. You can see the huge red bar on the weekly. If you want to trade this, so you could look at this as a range, right? And say 350 is resistance, and I'm going to try and buy it down here. If I'm going to do that, I'm probably looking for some kind of a signal where this is coming to test. I'm looking for some kind of a reversal on the hourly. I probably want to see a 1, 2, 3 on the hourly into this support zone if I want to trade it that way. But I'd recognize that this is only a range play and not a trending play. All right. Okay, let's look at ACMR real quick. Pullback looks pretty good. We get a little overrun on the weekly, but this overall pattern looks pretty good. Look for this to maybe, so the safest way to do this is to make this kind of breakout and then make a higher low. That's what I'd be looking for on the daily chart. I don't think I would just take a move to the upside unless it's a massive green bar, a really strong green bar shows up on the daily chart, but certainly a stock to be on the lookout for. This has held up well, and we got, based on my weekly report that I put out to subscribers on Monday, the technology area has gotten oversold on a short-term basis, so you could start to look for stocks that are kind of hanging in there and potentially triggering. Thanks for watching the show today. If you have any stock requests that you'd like me to analyze on next week's show, send it to stocktalk@stockcharts.com. And remember, the show's on Wednesdays now, so get it in earlier in the week. Also, if you have an interest in learning more about some of these techniques, you can look at my YouTube channel, which is called Invest Like a Pro. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.